Hello and welcome back to another video. I started off this project by making a template of the base. When the template is taped, I get a feel for the actual size of the build and plan the rest of the build from here on out. I use an empty 3D printer filament spool core as a support for the base. I glue on a sheet of EVA foam to cover up the label and to make the surface even. Some weights hold everything in place while drying. When the glue has dried, I trim the edges. Then use a pencil to mark out where the light sources are, using the template as a guide. Now it's time to place the lights. Christmas lights are quite cheap in the spring, but if I were to make this again, I think I would go for LED strips instead, because this was a tedious job. I don't want the hot glue to clump up, so I smear it out with my fingers. You should obviously not do what I just did. A blue marker to the bulbs would have worked a lot better, but done is done, I guess. Next, I trace out the Chica design on some baking paper. Then roll out a polymer clay sheet, press it down on the baking paper. Now I use my hobby knife to cut out the design. I then roll out some snaky dealies, or is that what they are called? And sculpt the rest of the base, roughly inside the lines of the template. This base is getting covered with a texture later, so I am not too worried about making it perfect at this stage. When that is done, it's into the oven to cure. This project is actually my first ever collaboration with another YouTuber. Noobmark makes some awesome videos, and unlike me, he's a very talented sculptor, so this was a great opportunity for me to exploit his talent. I had just begun working on this project when I received a package from Noobmark. Okay, let's see. It contains a very nice letter and with a prophecy. I approve. And what is this? I guess this last package is the Link figure, though I must say I will not be disappointed if it's another package of sausage. Wow, that's so sick. This puts a lot of pressure on my part of the build though, but yeah, it looks amazing. Okay, back to my sculpting. Yeah, to add texture to the base, or rather to cover it up, I mix plaster, baking soda, water and brown paint. However, baking soda's main purpose in baking is as a leaving agent, so my mix became frothy and doesn't provide the texture I was aiming for. It also takes a while to dry and doesn't adhere well to the polymer clay. So I make a new mix using fine sand, Mod Podge and paint, and it works much better. The sponge is used to even out the texture layer and to remove any brush marks. When the mix is dry, I prime everything in a dark brown, then start painting highlights. First a yellowish color, then a tan color. After that, I cover everything in a dark brown wash. came out a little too dark, so I go over everything with a light dry brush. Next, I use my airbrush to give all the edges where the light is going to shine through a fake blue glow. I was afraid the clay would warp the bottom plastic layer, so I glued the pieces directly to the side of a plastic box. This makes sure the plastic stay rigid, but it also makes the task of cutting it loose quite challenging. I use a black Sharpie and the template to write the symbols. According to some nerds online, it translates into transport, which makes sense in the game. I tint some UV resin with blue resin dye and carefully fill the voids. Where I accidentally spill resin, I wipe it away before curing it with the UV light. I once again use my template as a template to plan out the shapes I need to make all the planks. Lucky for me, I noticed my mistakes marking out the first piece. The wood grain runs parallel with the planks, not across. After cutting out all the planks, I exaggerate the wood grain texture with a wire brush. And the fine wood chippings is collected because the hobby has made me into a hoarder, that's why. Then all the planks are glued together. The balsa wood takes the super glue really good, and I only need to hold it for a couple of seconds before they are stuck to each other. The lights have a height to them, so I can't just place the platform on top. So I make a ring of XPS faux to give the sides some height, and to give the platform something to be glued onto. I cut it into the right height, then glue it to the base. When the ring is glued in place, I paint it with a protective layer of Mod Podge and blue paint to blend it in. I obviously don't want the pink to shine through the base. Balsa wood is quite soft, so I paint on a Mod Podge and brown paint mix to give it both color and additional strength. The brown on its own make the planks look very flat, so I add a light grey dry brush with a makeup brush, but also paint on a thin stippled line on all the edges of the planks to bring them out even more. It takes a bit of time, but I'm very happy with that. I then glue the planks to the base and the platform to the planks. Now it's really coming together, but to blend the base to the planks a little better and to give it additional strength, I use a 2-part epoxy putty. Some water on the silicone sculptor tool make the blending easier. The sponge gives the putty some texture to blend it even more. After a couple of hours, I can paint the epoxy. I paint on a dark brown on the epoxy and a black wash on the epoxy planks and platform to make them look like they belong together. To make the tentacles, I used this short clip as a reference and 3D modeled a scale that fits inside itself, then printed out a whole lot of them. I then thread them onto a wire and glue them to a bead, then to each other. Once the tentacle part is done, I glue on the claw, which I also 3D modeled and printed out. The template and 3D models used in this build can be found on my Patreon page. In the reference clip there are 6 arms. One of them looks like they are grabbing a sort of winch. I didn't 3D model a claw gripping, so I used the open claw, cut off the fingers and attach them to the bead. I know now that the game is out what this actually looks like, and I realize it's not totally correct, but it's alright. I fill the gaps with green stuff. The paint job on them is far from perfect, but with a dry brush they look decent. I use a tape measure to ensure even spacing between the 6 magnets. I cut out a slot, sand the smooth surface to give it some teeth, and then hot glue it in place with a lot of glue. There was a plan with the bead on the end of the tentacles all along. I can attach all the arms, and with that, it's done. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel, like, leave a comment and all of that, and please also check out Noobmark's video of the collaboration. Until next time, have a good one.